Alright, so I'm back, and I need... Ty's here. He's right here. I need to do a emergency rant of the week, because I just saw something absolutely horrible. And you guys already know from the title, but... I watched the new TMNT movie for the first time. This was the Babe produced or Babe directed or whatever. He had some sort of hand in it. And, oh my god. This movie was garbage. I mean... I will buy... I would buy an Apollyon and an Ollie before I watch this movie again. And you guys know how I feel about those two figures. No, this was bad. This was bad. As bad as they get when it comes to movies like that. Now, I watched the original movies growing up. I really enjoyed those. Well, the first two anyway. Secret of the Ooze is awesome. The third one though, when they start time traveling, but that still was a better movie than this. The animated show, you know, while it got more childish as the show progressed, was still a good show. I wouldn't call it like as good as Transformers, but I would definitely put it in the same categories of cartoons back when I was a child that inspired me. You know, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, Transformers, Power Rangers even, stuff like that. You know, that stuff was enjoyable as a child. But this... I don't even know where to begin here. So let's talk about the positives. Well, I don't think it was a necessary change to change the Foot Clan from being the ninjas that they were in the original animation and the original live action. I never read the comics, so I can't put any kind of reference towards the comics. I know they were grittier than what we got for the live action than animated. Anyway, changing them from ninjas over to like kind of a terrorist cell, not my favorite decision. I wouldn't have done that. I would have kept it the same. But at the same time, I'm okay with it. That's it. That's my positives. A change that I wouldn't have done myself that I'm okay with. There's nothing else. Oh my god, there's nothing else. Oh my god. Alright, so let's talk about the characters. So first off, April O'Neil. Reporter, played by Megan Fox. Whatever, I guess it was tolerable. Her acting was tolerable in this movie. It wasn't like I wasn't just sitting there like I want to kill myself. But she proves in this movie she's not a lead actress, because that's what they kind of seemed to turn this into, was more of the April O'Neil movie as opposed to the Turtles movie. You know, the Turtles were there, but she was like the main character because it was all centered around her story arc. Okay, spoiler alert, because I'm going to ruin this movie. Although the people that made the movie couldn't have ruined it more, but full on spoiler alert, just to warn you all. Although I'm sure either you've seen it or you've heard it all, what the plot was. But anyway, spoiler alert. Let's just get it all out in the open. So April O'Neil was her dad was the scientist that created the mutagen. She was the one that named the turtles, and she saved them from the fire and put them in the sewer, and that's how they got away and then turned into the Ninja Turtles. So she was instrumental to the creation of them, which was stupid, beyond comprehensional belief. Stupid. I mean, what the fuck? It made no sense. Okay, so none of that made any sense to me. Now, what they should have done, and I'm going to do this a lot, if you want to make her a central character to this movie, what you should do is make her a reporter. Like she was trying to be. She was just trying to be a reporter that just happened to stumble into the right places at the right times. Twice. Yeah. Sure. Make her a reporter. Make her find out about the turtles, little bits of them. Find out maybe something about the mutagen and do research on where the mutagen came from. Who created it? Who was the guy, the scientist that died trying to stop it? Maybe she could find some old footage of him trying to save the turtles back when they were still turtles. That would have made her a credible reporter, and that would have made the movie a little bit better rather than trying to shoehorn in this backstory that made no sense whatsoever. I don't know about the comics, but I know it had nothing to do with the animated show and nothing to do with the live action movies. So, did not like it. Not one bit. Okay, then let's see. Let's talk about, then there's all these extra side characters. The guy that drove her van that wanted to do things with her. Yeah. He was a throwaway character. The evil mad scientist. He was an evil mad scientist, typical. You don't see what happens to him in the end. He gets sprayed with some exhaust, but that's it. You don't see, did he die? Did he get arrested? Did he get away? What's the deal? Same with the Shredder at the end of the movie. You see him put his finger in the mutagen, and that was the end of it. Did he die? Is the mutagen gonna resurrect him? Did he get away from the giant crowd of people around his body? Did he actually survive the fall, or what? I mean, didn't answer any questions, so that was stupid. Alright, then let's get into the turtles. I'm gonna save the last two for the end. The Shredder and Splinter opinions. Okay, so Donatello, he was always the smart one. For the most part, he did his part as the smart one. Although he seemed to have a little bit of tech that was beyond our current abilities, and I don't see how. I liked in the original animated show. I liked how he was the scientist of the group, and what he was doing was he was taking junk and fixing it up with other junk and stuff that they scavenged from the Foot Clan. In this one, though, he's got this wrist monitor that tells him exact locations and GPSs and down the hill. Okay, we got a 50-foot drop coming up in about 5 feet, or 500-foot drop in about 50 feet, something like that. And he's just and he's doing this while he's sliding down the side of a mountain, and it's when did he have that kind of tech? He built the Michelangelo's hoverboard. Okay, in the original show they had a hoverboard, but they took that from the neutrinos, who were from Dimension X, so a complete different dimension that had flying cars and all that stuff. So I can get behind that idea, but I can't get behind the idea of some some scientist in a sewer building something that advanced. No, I can't. His bow staff would extend and retract. Okay, that makes sense. That's something that I'm sure you can build out of scrap in the basement. Is he? I mean, even Tony Stark couldn't build something like that advanced, that worked that well. When he was captured at the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, he built the test armor, but that was still, it was nothing like his advanced armor, and he was using high tech weaponry to build it. So, yeah, whatever. Raphael, dark and broody. They probably played it up a little too much with his feud with Leonardo. I think the animated TMNT movie that came out several years ago, they played off the rivalry between the two better. Infinitely better, and the fight between the two was awesome in that movie. That's probably one of my favorite animated fights of all time. I thought that was just perfectly done, with Raphael first taking on Leonardo in the Night Stalker outfit, and then finally he loses his helmet, and then now it's Raphael versus Leonardo, and it's awesome. If you want nothing to do with Ninja Turtles, at least go watch that fight. It was a fun fight, great action, very well choreographed for a CGI movie. Better than anything in this piece of shit. So yeah, they just had that rivalry where he's like, "Why are you talking to me like that?" And you like throw a punch at him. And it's like, why? Why? I understand some teenagers are angry and they rage, but you need a little bit more character depth than that. You need to know more. And they try to shoehorn it in at the end of the movie when he's like apologizing for being so rude and all that stuff. But that's not his character. He needed to be more like like telling Leonardo, like, you know what, I don't agree with your plan here. I can plan this better, because he thought that he was the better leader, and that's what made that bickering, the best, because Leonardo was the better leader. Raphael thought he was should be the better leader, and they would butt heads, but they wouldn't really explode too often because they were still brothers and they still have the strong family ties. It worked really well in the animated and the live action movies and the TMNT CGI movie. In this, he seemed like a douchebag. They didn't showcase enough of the characters to really know what he was feeling. Then we have let's see, Michelangelo, who, rather than being, the cool, trying to be cool kid from the early 90s, cowabunga, radical, and all that stuff. No. Sorry. Lay down. So instead of that, he was more of a definitely a sexual deviant. That was pretty creepy. I did not enjoy it. I didn't find it funny at all. There's no purpose to him acting like that in this movie. It's just, saying lines to, the other turtles, like, "Oh man, oh, she's so hot that my shell's getting swollen." It's like, really? I mean, it's as bad as Wheelie in Revenge of the Fallen humping Megan Fox's leg. And it's just like, why is that here? Why is that in this movie? I don't want to see that. I don't care about that shit. I want to see the Turtles fighting the Foot Clan. I want to see Transformers beating the shit out of other Transformers. want to see a robot humping a leg or a turtle coming onto a human. Talking about his swollen shell. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear about it. No, there's no place for that in this kind of movie at all. You know, if you're gearing it towards adults, I find it stupid. It's just that stupid Michael Bay humor that I absolutely can't stand, that he's showcasing here. And every scene Michelangelo's in, that's what he's doing. And then, it's just... And if you're gearing this movie for kids, that's not appropriate at all. Not at all. Real briefly, the humor in this is geared towards children, but then some of it is like geared towards adults. You know, things like the swollen shell thing, and it's just kind of like... You can't make this dumb down the action, everything about this movie to gear towards kids, and then throw shit like that in there. That's not like those secret innuendos that you catch from like the Shrek movie, stuff like that where the parents start laughing and the kids are like, oh, what are they laughing at? And it's like, hey, you'll figure out when you're older. I ain't gonna explain that one to you. But this one it's blunt. It's just blunt. It's stupid. Leonardo honestly just wasn't in the movie enough to be Leonardo. I mean, he's supposed to be the cool, the collected leader, but more than anything, he was just kind of there. Like I said, he just wasn't in the movie enough. I thought there was more Michelangelo time than there was Leonardo. And that wasn't very enjoyable because I like Leonardo. I like his story arcs. When he gets into it, I like the fact that he's the one that can generally fight Shredder to a standstill in the animated show, anyway. But in this one, no, he couldn't. He's barely there. He was the better trained. He was the better, like I said, calm, collected. He's the better leader. Watch the TMNT movie if you want to watch a modern take on the Turtles. It's night and day with this thing. Seriously, it's just like, it will blow your mind how good that movie is with the story arc, with the feeling of the family. And they don't really go into much backstory. So they're just assuming that you know enough about... it was like those directed DVD Batman, Superman, Justice League kind of movies where they don't really go into exactly what is going on in their world, but they just kind of throw you in there and you just kind of pick it up as you go along, and they just assume you know enough about the story, run with it. And it's like, okay, cool. This one, nope. Michael Bay just said, fuck you guys. Splinter. Let's talk about Splinter. Oh my god, this was just a fucking nightmare. Okay, so in the original animated show, Splinter was a human that was a rival to Shredder before they became what we know them for. Sorry, he keeps getting closer and closer to the tripod. So he was a human. And that's how he knew his new ninjutsu. And then he got mutated with the rat, and he took the turtles in and started training them what he knew. In the live action movies, he was a rat that had a sensei, and he would watch what the sensei was doing, and then once he had the mutagen in him, he became Splinter, and then taught the turtles. This one, no, he found a book of ninjutsu, taught himself, and then taught them, because you can learn ninjutsu from a book. Pretty sure you need some training, not just looking it up in a book. That's just me. I mean, let's take it into a Transformers context here real quick. If you read MP10's, he's sitting right there, MP10's instruction manual 100 times, but you never touch the actual toy, are you really going to be able to transform it the first time through? Maybe. Maybe not. But you don't have any hands-on experience with it. Yeah, stop. I know you can read like Army manual guides and, you know, try and, you know, pretend that you're part of the Army, but just reading the Army guide, does that make you part of the Army? No. Does that make you a soldier? You know, somebody trained like a soldier? No. You need somebody to show you, somebody that's been there, somebody that knows, somebody that's been trained. That's why there's training academies. You know, that's why they do that. You don't just pick up a book and be like, oh, man, page 33, okay, there's that. And, you know, this isn't the fucking Matrix. He also acted like a complete idiot half the time. I didn't enjoy the comedy around him. I didn't enjoy seeing him, you know, beat up the turtles with his tail. I mean, that was stupid. You never see him do that in the live action movies, and you never see him doing that in the animated series. Why? Because the turtles respected him. You know, yeah, they would go behind his back. They would do something that he said don't do. Yeah, they'd do that. But if you caught him doing it, stop. Just sit down. He's throwing his bone at the tripod. But no, they respected him. So like, if he caught them doing something, they would tell him what they were doing. That, you know, and if he would punish them, it would be, you know, go do your studies. You know, go do backflips. I'm thinking in the second live action movie, he made Michelangelo do all these backflips, and then when you see, now this is where comedy works in those kind of movies, is when, you know, that you hear him in the background doing it, and then when the camera pans over and everyone looks at him, he's just kind of jumping up and down and going like this. And then he just stops. He's like, I'll start over. That was funny. You know, that's a... No. Sit down. Down. Sorry. But that was the thing about him, is like, he would just look at them and they would know they were in trouble and they would do whatever he says. They wouldn't sit there and betray him and lie to him and, you know, stuff like that. He didn't have to torture them. And then there's that whatever weird room where Leonardo's got eggs on his head and he's going like this, and it's like, you know, Donatello's over there playing paddleball. That's his punishment, paddleball. Really? I mean, come on. Raphael's knitting. Michelangelo's standing on his head, and the way he betrays his brother is Splinter starts offering a cheese pizza to him, and he starts naming the ingredients. It's like, no. It's actually hurting me thinking about this. Because it just irritated me so bad. I'm just like, what is going on with this? I just... And then he was a super badass when he was fighting Shredder. And he basically kind of turned into Yoda. He's doing backflips and running across the walls and dodging knives in midair, and it's just kind of like, that's not Splinter. In the original live action movies, he was old and frail, and he didn't do very much except for give wisdom. And that was one of the greatest things about him back in the day. Like, in the original animated movie, the first one, that kid that was that was training to be a Foot Clan, and he found Splinter, and Splinter forgave him for all his trespasses. And he's sitting there and he's talking to him. He's like, yes, he's very calm, collected, telling him, what's going on, and this is why your leader's bad. This is why you shouldn't listen to him. It was just like, that's a sensei. That's a father figure. That's what I kind of like about Splinter, is that he's old. He's done this. He's done his fighting. Now he's teaching the youth to be the fighters, to fight to carry on the fight for him. And then in the animated movie, like, for the most part, again, he was old and frail. He didn't jump into combat, but when combat came to him, he was able to hold his own. But it was very clear that, he wouldn't have been able to fight a whole bunch of people. But, he'd take on one or two if he had to. And in this movie, though, he was bouncing off the walls, and he's using his tail like a whip, and it's like, it's just like the Yoda scene where you're sitting there and you're like, trying to follow him on the screen, and it's like, wait, what the fuck am I watching? It's like, that's not Splinter. And Shredder. Dear old Shredder. Oh my god, this thing was so stupid. It was absolutely retarded. I mean, okay, so you get this menacing, ninjutsu guy in the background. He's like, talking all mean and threatening and stuff like that. It's like, okay, cool. We got the villain, and then the other villain, the mad scientist guy, comes up and he's like, hey, yeah, I upgraded your suit for modern times. And it's like, oh god, he didn't. And yes, of course he did. So now we got a spiky version of the Iron Mongrel suit, basically, from Iron Man 1. He fell over. He just fell over. Stop. So calm down. So he's got this super suit, which is ridiculous looking. It's got these gigantic pillars of destruction off his back and forearms, and yeah, I mean, he looks like a cartoon character. And he's just like, he's walking around, he's like, yes, I am the Shredder. And it's just like, what is this thing? What is this supposed to be? And then, rather than having the two claws that came out of one hand, because he had, in the original animated show, he had just two claws. And I think it was the same in the movie too. Just the two claws, and then he had spikes going up his arms. And, would you stop? And he had the big spiked helmet, which was, intimidating. He was menacing. Watch the first scene you actually see him in the original animated, or the original live action movie, and you're gonna sit there and be like, oh, so that's Shredder. That's what he was supposed to be in this movie, because that guy was fucking menacing, and there's nothing super high tech about him, and he just kind of was. He had that presence, that feel of this guy is a bad guy. I mean, it'd be like, trying to make him look intimidating like the way they did would be like if Darth Vader, instead of having just regular robotic parts added on to replace his lost limbs, had gigantic, Gatling guns. I mean, it's too much. I mean, Darth Vader is a villain on his own. He's a threat on his own. He doesn't need Gatling guns. Yeah, okay, imagine if Darth Vader was built more like Ed 209 from RoboCop. Imagine that. You wouldn't sit there and be like, oh, man, this is a real villain. You're sitting there thinking more like, okay, this is generic robotic monster number 7. That's what I felt with this Shredder. There was nothing about him that was absolutely incredible. But anyway, back to what I was saying about the spikes. Instead of having just the two spikes that came out of here, instead he had this fan blade of swords and knives that like fold out of his arms like Falcon's wings would fold out of his back, and it's just like ting, 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 ting. And then he'd like shoot them off, and it's like, okay, you're shooting knives at people now. And then he'd like open his hand, and like you'd see this magnetic pulse come out, and they would all retract back into him, and it's like, I mean, really? The original Shredder in the animated show. Let's talk animated. He was able to fight any one of the turtles and win. The 4 turtles were able to defeat him, you know, and he would have to fall back. That's why he created Rocksteady and Bebop to help even the odds. But for the most part, if he was fighting one-on-one, not even a fight. In the live-action movie, the original live-action movie, Shredder beat the ever-living shit out of each one of the turtles, one by one, and as a group. He didn't need a mech suit. He didn't need giant swords that flew across the screen that he'd be able to magnetize back to him. He was a guy with some spikes who was a badass. Okay, that's the problem with certain movies these days, I think, is because they think they need to upgrade villains to the point where they're no longer that same villain. Now, I mean, Megatron in the live action movies, he could fight the Transformers. He could fight Optimus Prime. He's not going to win, but he could fight him. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he could fight him. Just like he did in the original show. So, why didn't we just give him a giant mech suit for the live action movie? I mean, he should have... I mean, if that's the way Bayu thinks that Shredder needs to be, why can't we give Megatron a giant mech suit? If you guys know what I mean. I mean, it's just... Shredder doesn't need a mech suit to fight the Turtles. Shredder's better than the Turtles. That's why he was a threat. He's a credible threat on his own. That's why, having the Foot Clan with him is even worse. Because now you have a bunch of guys that, while they're not very good, because he's so good, they are now a threat because you cannot focus on him while fighting all the stupid, henchmen. And then Rocksteady and Bebop, in the original animated show, when they first came out, not after a couple seasons with them, they started just turning into literally cartoon characters that were bumbling idiots. But then again, so did the Turtles. But when they first came out, I mean, they were legitimate threats. And by adding those two to his army, so it was him, Rocksteady, Bebop, and the Foot Clan. And now we have something menacing beyond belief. I mean, these guys were sitting there with like machine guns, and they would be able to outpower the Turtles, even though the Turtles outnumbered them 2-1. Same with Toka and Razor in Secret of the Ooze, the second live action movie. Those guys, there were only 2 of them, and they were able to fight the Turtles. But Shredder was able to fight the Turtle on his own. He didn't need anything else. Watch that final fight in the first live action movie. That final fight where he is just, and he's not like going crazy like, oh man, I need to destroy them now. He was just sitting there like taunting them. Like, okay, you know what? Come up with your best shot. Come on. You guys plan it out. He's waiting very patiently for him to do this. And, like, the Turtles would come up with a plan. They'd run out there, try to execute the plan, and he'd beat them all down. Why was he doing it that way? Because he knew he was that much better than them. He was proving it to them. He wasn't just necessarily showing off as he was demoralizing them. Because, when some villains, they do stuff like that, they're not generally better than the hero. They just think they are. He is better than the hero. He's not just any of the heroes. He's better than the entire team. He was able to defeat the Turtles one by one, and then once they gave him all the best shot, then they all ran up at the same time, and you see him just pummeling them. He's not even trying. Not at all. He's telling them, like, okay, this is what you're doing wrong. And just because he knew the art of ninjutsu. He knew how to fight. And he knew from just like glancing at the turtles, knew that they were young, impulsive, and they didn't have all the training that they required to be able to fight him. And yeah, so there you go. And the end of the original live action movie, it was because he lost his temper because of Splinter coming up to him, and Splinter basically just sidestepping him, and that's how he fell off the building. So that's how they were able to defeat him, is psychologically. They couldn't beat him physically because he was so much better than them. So yeah, that's why I absolutely hated Shredder in this movie. Just absolutely hated it. I don't know what else to say about it other than it was appalling. The whole movie was just garbage. I feel better now. I do. That's why I had this emergency rant of the week. This was not the one I was planning, and this is not going up on the same day that I usually do it. I'm putting this up tonight. It's Friday night. I'm putting this up tonight because I just need to get out in the world. I mean, this thing was just, as bad as Age of Extinction was, this was worse. Absolutely worse. Like I said, the only thing about this movie that I thought was okay was changing the foot soldiers, and that's it. I wouldn't have changed them if I were in charge of this movie. Hell, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck this whole thing. You want a good live action movie of the Ninja Turtles put on the big screen, Michael Bay, if you're out there, if you're listening, you buy the rights to the original live action movie and you put it on screen as is, because there is not a damn thing wrong with those movies. The animatronics, because it was a Jim Henson production, were absolutely amazing. They are better than any of the CGI you got in your shitty ass movies now, and it will be better than anything else you got for a long ass time. This stuff was just absolutely incredible back in the day. And when you had a guy in a gigantic rubber turtle suit with animatronics doing a backflip, it's actually a guy in a giant rubber suit with all these electronics doing backflips. It wasn't just like, some guy on strings flipping around. No. This was a guy in a giant rubber suit doing a backflip. I can't stress that enough. These guys were doing these stunts in these suits, and that's why they kept getting really exhausted. I read up like this whole thing about the original live action movies on how exhausting it was for them to do these movies, and they're just like how tired they were at the end of it, and how frustrated they were. And it's like they would get wet, and it would just like weigh them down, and it was just like a horrible experience for these guys. And Jim Henson went over there, and he went way over the top, because all the facial movements and stuff like that, that's all animatronics controlled by somebody on scene. Somebody sitting there like, okay, I'm moving this lip just a tiny bit here so I can have that little bit of a curl when he's talking. I'm moving the eyes left and right so that they're moving and watching people. None of this was CGI back in the day. None of it. And it looks so much better than this thing. Oh my god. I know they used a lot of motion capture for this movie, so that there are actually people there, but they're doing so many stunts that are like, and you're just sitting there like, no, that looks like a cartoon. There's actually a scene when the semi turns and starts going down the mountain where I thought it just turned into a cartoon. The animation on it was so bad that I thought it was actually a cartoon. Like Saturday morning, early 90s Ninja Turtle cartoon. That's what I thought I was watching for a second there. And then Megan Fox came back on the scene and was like, oh, yeah, there we go. And then the end of the movie. Oh, the very end of the movie, when Michelangelo accidentally shoots a rocket and blows up dude's car, and you have the full-on Michael Bay spark explosion, and you're just sitting there like, why was that in the movie? Was it legitimately just because Michael Bay sat there and said, you know what? I haven't done one of my sparky explosions for a while. I think we need to do one more for this movie. And then they did it. And you're just, I'm just like, what was the purpose of that scene? Fuck you, Michael Bay. And whoever wrote the damn thing, whoever directed the damn thing, I think Michael Bay was the producer. But fuck y'all. You've taken a big pile of steaming shit on yet another aspect of my childhood. Thank you. Thank you. If they ever do a live action E-Man movie, if Michael Bay gets the rights to it, I'm gonna be pretty pissed off. I mean, this was that bad. This was that bad. I'm done.